We are getting word and are able to confirm now that Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer is hanging up his robe and retiring after serving for 28 years on the Supreme Court. 83 years old, Breyer is the oldest justice on the conservative 6-3 court and the most senior member of its liberal wing. We'd like to begin with bringing in our senior national correspondent, Terry Moran. Terry, definitely known as the court's most famous pragmatist.
That's a great way of putting it, Kira. He is in an era of surging ideological attitudes on the court and a sharply divided court, left and right. Stephen Breyer always tried to strike a more moderate tone. Both in oral arguments and in his opinions mostly, he tried to bridge the gap there. He was a liberal, no question about it, but a pragmatic liberal. He always seemed to focus on the impact that cases had on the real lives of real people. He was less concerned, even though he had been a university professor and had a very professorial demeanor in court. He really did focus on what impact things might have had on ordinary people. This is no surprise. It will gladden the heart of liberals across the country who've been openly pressuring Stephen Breyer to retire, given the possibility that Republicans will take the Senate and once again dominate selections on the court. Breyer said last year, if the public sees judges as politicians in robes, its confidence in the court can only diminish. Which bothered a lot of liberals because they thought he was pushing back on their efforts to persuade him that now is the time to retire. He's in good health. He's been working full time and an active participant in both arguments and these big cases. But he has decided, for whatever reason, he hasn't made that clear at this point, to retire now. And it is a big opportunity for President Biden to restore some, perhaps stronger, liberal voice on the court.
Terry, let's talk about the balance of the court as we look at the philosophy here, both from the liberal and conservative side. I mean, calling for Breyer's retirement is not new. Almost as soon as President Biden was elected, progressives really put the demand down for Breyer to step down.
They really did. They were outside his house if they saw him. I mean, it was a full campaign. Somebody rented a truck at one point, drove it around the Supreme Court with a big sign on its side trying to get him to retire. It was, in the eyes of the justices, unseemly. They think their authority, the way the public trusts their opinions can only come from at least them seeming to be above the politics of the moment. And there were some people who thought it would backfire because Justice Breyer is an open advocate of non-political as much as possible judges and justices, and he lived his life on the court that way to a considerable degree. But it will come as good news to the liberals because of the opportunity. And Justice Breyer, as you said, he's been on the court a long time. He's achieved a lot. He didn't have any, as I say, sweeping jurisprudential approach, but he leaves behind him a legacy of a justice who tried to remind the others on the court, once again, in oral arguments, you'd hear him do it, and in his opinions, that their cases weren't just about arranging the law, but had impact on people's lives. And that drew him to his conclusions in many cases. That's something that the court lacks sometimes. Sometimes it's a very abstract court, and Justice Breyer tried to bring it back down to earth.
Well, quite a legacy, indeed, a legacy that Kate Shaw has followed for many of years, who follows the Supreme Court for us as an ABC News contributor. Kate, as we confirm this news that Stephen Breyer is retiring from the Supreme Court, how do you feel about what he leaves behind with regard to his legacy and also the possible contenders here to replace him?
Well, Kira, I do think that liberals and progressives are definitely breathing a sigh of relief right now. Breyer had sent mixed signals about his plans despite his age and the possibility that, the Republicans may take the Senate in the midterms. And so there will be a lot of relief today that it looks like President Biden will be able to fill this vacancy. And filling that vacancy won't change the balance of the court. Of course, Breyer was appointed by President Bill Clinton. So this would be a nominee, in the same potential sort of broad spirit merit as Justice Breyer. But as Terry was saying, Justice Breyer was the most senior liberal justice after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died just over a year ago. But he was no means the furthest left on the court. So I do think that President Biden has the opportunity to put onto the court a nominee who is both more progressive than Justice Breyer and, importantly, quite a bit younger than Justice Breyer. There are nominees on the short list in their 40s and early 50s. And President Biden has suggested very strongly that he would like to nominate a woman of color, ideally an African-American woman, to the Supreme Court, which would be a first if he does put an African-American woman on the court. And there are some very, very distinguished shortlisters whose names we have heard in circulation. One, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, a judge on the D.C. Circuit. She's actually a former Breyer clerk herself and an extremely distinguished jurist after a very distinguished career in practice. The D.C. Circuit is kind of like the junior Supreme Court. It's the second most powerful court in the country, so that's a natural stepping stone to the Supreme Court. We've also heard the name Leandra Kruger, also an African-American woman, a justice on the California Supreme Court, also an incredibly distinguished career in the federal government. She argued before the Supreme Court many times in the Solicitor General's office and has now been on the California Supreme Court for about 7 years. So I think those two are at the top of the list. And, they would cement a younger female three-justice liberal minority on the court. And, I think that it's significant potentially that there would be a third woman in the liberal bloc. At the moment, the court is poised potentially to overturn Roe versus Wade, potentially to roll back or even eliminate affirmative action, to restrict states' abilities to limit guns. So this is a very conservative court with a very long list of action items. And so, there could be some transformational effect that this nominee could have on what this court looks like.
Our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, as we get this news, John, just looking ahead at the confirmation process, this no doubt will be an interesting one to follow.
It will be, with a 50-50 Senate and the vice president casting the tie-breaking vote here. What's interesting is Supreme Court confirmations had long been required a supermajority because you needed to overcome any potential filibuster. But now Joe Biden can thank Mitch McConnell for changing the Senate rules on that front. It now only requires a simple majority to confirm a Supreme Court nominee under Senate rules. And if you look back, Donald Trump had 3 nominees that got confirmed almost entirely on party line votes. His first nominee, Gorsuch, had only 3 Democrats. His second one had only a single Democrat, and his last, Amy Coney Barrett, was entirely along party lines. So all Joe Biden needs to do to get his nominee confirmed here is to keep every single Democrat on board. He could actually do this without a single Republican vote. But, it's one thing, Kira, to remember that it isn't all that long ago that Supreme Court nominations were largely nonpartisan or less partisan affairs. If you think about the 2 most prominent conservative and liberal on the court, RBG was confirmed 96-3 when she was nominated by Bill Clinton. Antonin Scalia, the conservative hero on the court, was confirmed without a single vote against him, 98 to nothing. Obviously, we live in much different times right now, and this will undoubtedly be a contentious process no matter who Biden chooses.
Well, contentious indeed, but he did make that promise that it would be a woman of color. Terry Moran, final thoughts here as we move forward. And now that we have confirmed indeed that Stephen Breyer will retire, we do look forward to the future here and what it holds.
We do, and it's been said and truly that every new justice changes the court as a whole, changes the nature of the discussions and sometimes the decisions as well. And with President Biden's pledge to name a woman of color, the first a black woman potentially on the Supreme Court, that is something that he has considered and been pressed to do. It would change the court, not just demographically, but in a life experience that are brought to these cases. And I'd like to add the name of Judge J. Michelle Childs, a federal district court judge in South Carolina, who has been Jim Clyburn, Representative Jim Clyburn, the Democratic congressman from South Carolina, has been championing her. He basically helped Joe Biden get elected when he endorsed him in South Carolina, and she would bring a different kind of experience as well. She has a statewide election background. She was elected statewide official a couple of times, and that is something the court desperately needs: practical experience at the state government level. But in general, what it actually will do is change the nature of the discussions in the court. And I think that is something that the court looks forward to. It's the end of an era, and Breyer represented it a little bit more moderate, a little more friendly across those ideological divides. We have very sharp political divides now, and my hunch is that whatever the court's tradition of cordiality is, we're about to get a more sharply divided ideological Supreme Court.